placing voices at the center, youth voices in shaping policy and action. The discussion brings together distinguished individuals who have worked across government, law, journalism, activism, technology, and community. Each representing how leadership today must be informed by empathy, evidence, and inclusion.
May I request the panelists to please occupy the seats on stage? Allow us to introduce our panelists today. Our first panelist is Shri Amit Chakma, a scientist at the Defense Research and Development Organization, currently serving as the head of software engineering in the Land Technology Division, Bengaluru. With over 18 years of distinguished service in DRDO, he has contributed to several strategic national programs and missions-critical projects. Beyond his professional role, Shri Chakma has been deeply committed to community service through the Bangalore Chakma Society since 2007. During the COVID-19 pandemic, he led large-scale relief efforts, mobilizing funds and providing essential food supplies and special assistance to more than 2,000 Chakma individuals across Bengaluru, including children and pregnant women. We are honored to have him with us today.
Our next panelist is Mr. Rajesh AM, an officer of the Indian Forest Service 2013 batch. He currently serves as a Joint Resident Commissioner and Liaison Officer at the Manipur Liaison Office in Bengaluru, and also oversees the Manipur houses in Vellore and Mumbai under the government of Manipur. Through his work, he plays a key role in connecting regional governance with national institutions, ensuring that the voices and needs of Manipur are represented efficiently. We are pleased to welcome him to this panel.
Our third panelist is Romal Singh, a writer, editor, stylist, journalist, activist, and diversity and inclusion trainer based in Bengaluru. He is widely recognized as an LGBTQIA rights activist and the founder of QAMI, the Queer Arts Movement in India, as well as Rainbow, a public funding initiative for LGBTQIA communities. He currently works as an assistant editor with Indulge at the New Indian Express in New York, where he continues to use media as a powerful tool for representation, inclusion, and social change. We are delighted to have him with us.
Our fourth panelist is Ms. Meemansa Singh, an LLM graduate from TISS Mumbai and a postgraduate certificate holder in public policy and management from IIM Visakhapatnam. She has previously worked with PwC India, the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, and Jindal Global Law School. She is also the co-founder of the Red Cycle, an NGO dedicated to menstrual health awareness and education. Currently, she serves as a senior program manager at Outlawed India, where she leads youth and student engagement programs and is spearheading the Nyaya Prayana Fellowship, training young legal fellows across Karnataka. Her work spans from tribal and self-help women in Rajasthan and Arunachal Pradesh to youth and civil society organizations across India, and we are honored to have her join this discussion.
To guide this conversation, we have two exceptional moderators with us here. Our first moderator is Ms. Ananya Kundu, a young peace advocate, feminist researcher, and activist. She is the senior researcher and gender specialist FRAG, a Canadian Afghan organization working on documenting and addressing gender-based persecution in Afghanistan. Her research on gender-based violence, refugee rights, and migration has been launched at the United Nations and is being used as evidence in ongoing international advocacy for Afghan women's rights. She is also a youth advisor at the Global Institute of Women's Leadership at the Australian National University and the founder and executive director of Outlawed Solidarity Network.
Joining her is Mr. Denise Marr, an indigenous development professional and peace builder. He is the founder of the Bridge School Project for Conflict-Affected Children and a co-founder of the Outlawed Solidarity Network, which promotes inclusive youth leadership across Asia. His work focuses on community transformation rooted in indigenous knowledge, particularly in the areas of environmental conservation, food systems, and cultural preservation. Denise is also a United Nations Youth Leader Fund Fellow for 2023-24 and a Youth Engagement and Empowerment Fellow for 2022. And he brings a unique ability to bridge social development policy and research through his work.
With such an accomplished panel and two inspiring moderators, we are confident that this session will be both insightful and impactful. I now invite Ananya Kundu and Dennis Kumar to take over and lead the panel discussion on placing voices at the center, youth voices in shaping policy and action. Thank you and over to you.
Thank you so much to our lovely MCs. And the room is a little emptier than we expected today because Bangalore decides to have rains at very, very unexpected times. But we are having this very important conversation. As many of you know, very recently we heard about the incident of Angel Chakma, who was a very young Tripura student in Uttarakhand who died after facing racist attacks and physical assault in that city. And it has restarted a conversation on racism, exclusion, discrimination in mainland Indian spaces for people who come from other states and other regions because of language, because of facial features, and because of multiple things. We are living in a political scenario and time where these fault lines of exclusionism is increasing day by day. A country where we used to say our strength lies in our diversity, we have suddenly started seeing diversity as our enemy. So against this backdrop, today's conversation is very important because we believe at Outlawed Solidarity Network that inclusive spaces and equality cannot only be bridged by talking about the positives. It can only be bridged by having very honest conversations about things which are going wrong. And dialogue across communities, across spaces and people is very, very important. And today's panel discussion is an attempt at having that sort of a very honest conversation and dialogue. So thank you everyone for joining us. And I will really turn to my panelist, Mr. Amit, for my very first question. So Amit, with the incident that very recently happened with Angel Chakma, it has restarted the conversation on racism. But it's not a new thing, is it? I mean, we were supposed to have many other groups coming. One particular is the Cookie Student Association organization, KSO. And they messaged us that they cannot come because one of their members had their phone snatched by a local and they all had to now rush to the police station to figure out what happened. And, the access to these spaces, the kind of everyday violence and aggression, it's not new. Nor is it just new for the Northeast community. It's there for people who always fall outside towards the margins. But I really want to ask you, as somebody who's lived in Bangalore for so long, you're from Tripura, you worked in the space of STEM, which we talk about representation so much. How have you witnessed through your experience and also from BCS where you're so involved? What are the kind of discrimination, aggression that people are facing in terms of, and how it's also translating into larger structural representation issues in a broader sense? And I would also like to ask, have you seen a change in those experiences over the last 2 decades? We are talking so much about this political influence, this, that. Has there been a change in that sense?
First of all, thank you, Amit, for inviting on this very beautiful panel discussion, right? This is a very good forum basically to speak out on this particular And if you look at the subject, it's so interesting, right? I mean, it has, the center, the youth, the policy and the action, right? These are the 4 key words that we have in this, topic, right? So, as you all know, this Angel Chakma's case, right? I come from Tripura. Angel Chakma was from Tripura, and I represent here the Bengaluru Chakma Society. So you have all seen what has happened, right? I need to talk about that, right? The whole country was looking, and the kind of the message that was going across, on the social medias, and the people are talking about it. But can you imagine, I mean, his father was in the border, securing this country's borders, and his son was being murdered by the same society, isn't it? I mean, I don't like. Isn't it something we should think about it, right? There's something. It is much more beyond an individual attack. It is inside the framework, the fabric of this whole society, how it has been created. And when you say discriminations, racial discriminations, I see that this is much beyond the racial discriminations. There are racial discriminations. There are at institutional discriminations are there. There are regional discriminations. When you belong to Northeast, somebody says you are from Northeast, people are blank. They just say something. If somebody asks me where are you from, I say Tripura. They just so they are. Okay, so they are blank. They say there is something called Northeast. We don't bother much about that, right? So the whole subject of Northeast, the racial discrimination, the regional discrimination, the institutional discriminations. I'll come and cover all these points because I just wanted to speak because these are very serious matters. We, as an individual, as you asked me, did I face? Any sort of that kind of discrimination? In last 18 years, I came to Bengal in 2007. Like in last 18 years, I have seen a lot. It is there across, But if you look at the discriminations. Does not get registered in some kind of complaints or something like that, because there are something minor, something brutal. Sometimes people gets beaten up. Okay. My own experience I share. Not to that extent that it has happened, but generally sometime back when I walked into a hospital for my brother's things, one guy says like, where are you from? In a different tone, right? And then I say I'm from Tripura. He says, are you from Nepal? Right. They doesn't know really, Tripura, so it's not the ignorance of the person. I don't blame the ignorance of that person. I blame altogether the society, the education system has not, given the right policy, the policy makers. They have not put these things on the, the syllabus. If you go to Northeast and ask any person about the mainland, the cities or the village or anything, people who is even working on the smallest of the sections, they can they can talk about this, they can tell about that. But you will see a lot of people who are very good higher educations and all, but they don't have any knowledge about the Northeast, right? So that is something. It's not the fault of the particular individual. It is the fault of the policymakers, right? And when you look at the case of Angel Chakma, this has just happened, right? We have not forgotten what has happened with the Arunachali boy, right? The Nido Tania, right? That has happened some decade back, 2014, right? But these are the few larger incidents that get, in the national media, right? But if you really look at, try to understand, there are many such things that, get unnoticed. We should, do a better classification of the this racial discrimination. We should not just say that if somebody gets killed, right, that is a racial discrimination. There are certain levels, like you can classify the racial discriminations at level A, B, C, D, or 1, 2, 3, 4. Certain kind of discriminations are always there, right? Not only at the individual level, the society level, at the institution level. Let me just give you one small example. We represent at least 8% of the landmass, the Northeast, right, of this country, right? We are 3 to 4% population of this country, right? But when we make a policy in the center, do we really consider the Northeasterns? No, nothing. If it was being considered, then you could have seen in the national policies, right? A lot of national institutes being in the Northeast, right? Have you seen why our students are coming to Bangalore and studying, right? Because we do not have the right education systems or the excellence in education systems, right? We do not have those centers. The central policy, whenever it was being created, any kind of policy when they drafted, they never looked at Northeast. But if you look at this 3 to 4% of population of this country is from Northeast, and we are actually larger than some of the European countries, right? We are 3 to 4 crore populations. We are larger than some of the European countries, right? So, but then when you make a policy, you never looked at us, right? It is something like a black box. You don't care about that. You don't talk about that. How many of our MPs, last 75 years, we have 39 MPs. How many of our MPs are given a, right position in the ministries? Did they get a right portfolio? No. How many of our Northeasterns, are in the top army generals or in the armed forces or the admirals, air chiefs? How many of are in the Supreme Court judges? You can just count them, right? So have we not? These discriminations are not only at the individual level. The discriminations are at the policies, at the regional discriminations are there at the institutional levels also. Okay, so we have to look at in a bigger perspective. When we solve this bigger perspective, bigger issues, right? Then only the you can the individual attacks, the individual discriminations that definitely will come down, right? So yeah, that is what my point. I thank you for this. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Whatever you say, we really agree to that. Because sometimes when we look, just before I ask question, something that also I want us to reflect as coming together here. Sometimes racism or discrimination doesn't just happen with a physical abuse immediately. It happens casually. It happens when, oh, he's a meat-eating person, he's a beef-eating person, they eat dogs. They might live in trees. Those stereotypes. We know that Indians, more particularly, Indians know that we don't live on trees. Mainland Indians know that all of them do not eat dog meat. But there is a profiling. So that is it is, it's not something it's more of an ignorance. It's not something they are not aware about. So it starts casually and it develops. So sometimes it is so important to understand where does this stem from? Is it, and who has a role in it? So if we do not speak out, who is going to speak out? So because this morning what really hit me was Gayatri Spivak just talk about the subalterns. Who are the subalterns here? Who will we speak? Who are the subalterns? So for us also as a Northeast, we are marginalized. As this panel is more about discrimination and racism. And I know there is a difference between discrimination and racism, but somehow, somewhere, in many spaces it goes together also. So my question will more be particularly about to Romal coming from a newsroom. Sometimes news to sensationalize, we use certain words, terminologies, and there has been an attempt in terms of news to do something for the Northeast to speak up. But has they done justice to that is something I want to first ask, first question. And secondly, are we actually doing enough in terms of educating the Indian public in terms of racism? Because we do talk about racism, we do say a lot about it, but we have not really, even in media spaces, there has not been a very honest attempt. So what have you seen based on your own experiences? And has the news been sensitized enough in terms of using certain terminologies when it comes to issuing news or writing stories about people from the Northeast or to the Tibetans or even for the Nepalese from the north of Bengal?
Okay, before I start talking about the question you posed to me, I think the previous thing that we talked about, something that's really important, especially for Northeasterners who live outside the Northeast, is, so I worked with Northeast Solidarity, which was an organization that existed for a very short time in Bangalore, when, I don't know if you remember, there was a lot of attacks on Assamese individuals. It was a religiously motivated attack and stuff like that. And then so a lot of organizations came together for the first time and Northeast Solidarity was created. For the first time in Bangalore, I've been in Bangalore since 2002. My mom's side of the family is South Indian. My dad is Manipuri. So we've been in Bangalore for a very long time. Something that I saw worked at that time was for the first time, multiple ethnicities from the Northeast came together and worked towards one cause, which we have not seen happen ever again. So today, for example, like within a city like Bangalore, while we talk about this Northeastern representation, how many times, like let's say now, a Chakma brother was attacked in Delhi. Does it personally affect a Meitei person like me? Does it personally affect a Naga person? Does it personally affect an Arunachali person? We're still very tribalistic in that sense as Northeastern people. And I feel the conversation has to go beyond just saying discrimination and saying what are we doing about the discrimination. If we're going to talk about a minority population, that's how democracies work. The government is not going to be bothered about people who represent 3 to 4%. Laws will exist. The discriminatory law exists. If you have the time and you have the money, and she can tell you about this, you can go and put a case against someone calling you chinky in court. Will you win the case is a different thing, right? The law exists. How much of us are able to do anything about these laws and use it to our benefit is a question here. How much of the community is supporting us to do this is also a question, because we're a fractured community. Let's be honest about it, right? When we come onto these forums, we say Northeast, Northeast, Northeast. But when we go back home, is each of us actually bothered about something happening to someone else from the Northeast? It really doesn't affect our daily basis. Politically, we like to say this, but we've not yet come together as a Northeast identity. And the only way forward in India, because we have such a small population, is to come together. See, today in India, the reality is, most of the Northeast who do not want to be politically active want to hide behind how much more like an Indian do you look. That's the conversations we have. Our Assamese brothers will say, I look like Indian. Our Tripura brothers also say, I pass off more as an Indian, whereas a Naga, an Arunachali, a Meitei, a Manipuri, a Mizo doesn't get that physical acceptance. No, you look different. So, in a culture where we're still trying to appease the majority, to get a minority representation is going to be very tough. First of all, education is required within the Northeast itself, that you are Indian citizens. This racism happening against you should not be happening. You should not be trying to appease the majority. You have equal legal rights within this country. Till we are legally educated about that, all we're going to do in this country is, in Karnataka we say, no, adjust mud. We're just going to keep Swalpa, adjust muddy. That's all we're going to do. So we need to have people who are telling us that you have the right to fight for your identity. You have the right to fight for this particular racism that is happening against you. We constantly say there is no law, and a legal expert will tell you there is law. Are we using it? No. If you have the patience and if you have the legal support, anytime you are called a racist thing in this country, you can take it to court. Tell me how many of you all will do that. Tomorrow if you're walking, will you do it? Then you should meet people like us on the panel, because we will help you do it, right? But you are 1 in a million, literally. And you know that too, right? Most of your friends, what will they tell you when you get racially abused? I just ignore it. Or sometimes what we do is we do something called reverse racism. As a Meitei, I know my community does this a lot, where we're just like, oh, who cares about them? They're anyway like that. We have a term in Meitei, which is called mayam, which is the term we use to refer to someone who's not looking like us. So now we reverse races. So we be like, look at them, they don't look like us anyway, they're not us, right? This is the defense mechanism. But we have to be able to accept the fact that the only future for people like us in India is to claim our Indian right, which none of us have done. Politically also we have not done. Recently, I'm sure you all saw that video of BJP MLAs from Manipur going to Delhi and being schooled by, it looked like a classroom. There were some 12 MLAs sitting there, and there were 3 BJP leaders sitting here and literally teaching them like they were talking to some second standard kids. That is the reality of the situation. The bigger majority is going to treat us like a absolutely pointless minority till we stand up for our rights. So, forums like this are actually a reminder to us that Northeasterns have to come together. we have a lack of population. The only way we will be politically important in a country like India is to have the numbers. For me, I'm someone who's marginalized twice. I'm a gay man. I come from a community that for the longest time was told you are minuscule minority. You are irrelevant to the country. Your population is so pointless that we don't even want to add you into our policies. But we fought. And eventually today now, also we have laws that protect us. Whether it's being used is a different thing, but it exists at least. So thank God for that. Now coming back to the media question asked. The media has always taken a more pro-social attitude. No newspaper editor will ever tell you that I want racism to exist, I want northeastern discrimination to exist. None of them will ever tell you that, because on the whole, media has always looked at itself with a little bit of a savior complex. We always look at ourselves as the watchdog, right? So we want to go in, we want to save, we want to do the correct thing. So it's not like people in newsrooms are not saying you can't do this. Like nobody in any newspaper in India, maybe in some mainland Hindi newspapers, I can't talk about them, but English papers in India, you will never hear anyone using a word like chinky. You will never hear anyone saying that. Does that mean they are accepting of the community? No. But they know if they use the term, they'll get into trouble. So it's an unsaid rule within newspaper organizations and media organizations that you cannot be discriminatory. But there will be discrimination on many other levels, and that's something that can't change without education. Like for example, it doesn't matter to me, but many times when people, I have this, I call it a burden and a boon, that I don't look very northeastern because I have a South Indian mother. People from the northeast know I'm from the northeast because they know what northeasterns look like, but a lot of people think I'm Bengali or Bihari or something like that, right? And so I get passed. Nobody thinks that they need to be racist towards me. When they do find out though, jokes will be passed. Like for example, someone is like, oh, so you eat dog meat. And you can have two responses. Either you can be defensive and be like, oh, we don't eat dog meat, what are you saying? Or you can be like, no, I've eaten dog, I've eaten ox, I've eaten camel, I've eaten deer. And then you ridicule them for being so stupid, right? But how many people are at that point where you have the confidence to do that? The first thing as a minority will be, you're saying something against me, I don't know, I feel discriminated, and you become quiet, and you become vulnerable, and you become smaller, right? And we have to give ourselves that space to not do that. The reason why today Northeasterns get beaten up, discriminated at, all of that, is because the first thing in the Northeast that is taught to people is humility. Like when someone insults you, you're not taught to give it back immediately, you're taught to keep quiet, and that's the cultural thing that we've been taught. But that has to change at some point in time. Are we trying to write about the Northeast a lot in papers? Believe me, coming from a newsroom, every single person in my newsroom wants to focus on the Northeast. If I tell you about the dribbling amount of information we get from the Northeast though, you will be shocked. Today, for example, if you have access to wires, so most newspapers run on information by wires, like the ANI or the PTI. These are news collecting organizations that will tell you what is happening around the country, across the world. They are usually fed by reporters from each of that state. Even now, if you type in a keyword like Arunachal Pradesh, or you type in a keyword like Mizoram, you'll get maximum 2 articles. Sometimes irrelevant things. Sometimes government-backed nonsensical articles. Like for example, 4 hospitals were opened in primary districts in Mizoram. How is that news relevant to anyone who wants to know what's happening in Mizoram at that point in time? Or during the whole Manipur issue, when there was the whole cookie versus Meitei problem happening, everyone was trying to get information. Nothing was coming out of the state. What was coming out of the state was very politicized. It was either pro this or pro that. Nobody was giving you a very clear picture. We had also received diktats from the central government that you cannot write about these things. So whatever little that you saw in newspapers at that point of time, they were acts of rebellion. They were papers showing the middle finger to the center, saying we don't care, we will still write. So when we point a finger against the media and say, why are you doing so little? Why is it that you're not doing it? There are a lot of efforts to do it. But the problem is, every time we write about the Northeast, we're only writing about problems. Now the big thing about understanding the Northeast, like for example, okay, how many of you all, when I tell you, what is the biggest dance in Punjab? What is the most famous food in Tamil Nadu? Dosa, idli, whatever. What is the most famous food from Manipur? That is the famous food of the Meitei community. But is there a famous food for the other communities? Do you know what they eat? Do you care what they eat? What is the how many districts are there in Arunachal Pradesh? None of us know these things, right? Why do we not know these things? Because over and beyond political representation, how do cultures become relevant in a context? Something called soft power. Have you heard this term called soft power? Soft power is what makes cultures relevant to another culture. Okay? So today, for example, because of how well the Northeast performs in sports, you'll know Mary Kom. Yeah? You all know Mary Kom. Movie also was made on her. You'll know 2-3 other names like that from the Northeast because they have got soft power. Correct? Most of the Northeast does not have soft power in the current mainland interpretation of India. So if you ask them, do you know what the difference is between a Naga and someone from Manipur? They don't know. Nor do they care. They don't have any cultural context as to, like for example, recently someone told me, hey, when you have your own culture, why are you also obsessed with Korean pop? I mean, it's a valid question because the rest of India is not, so why are you so well obsessed about it? Then you have to get into cultural context saying, do you know for a long time it was that music that made sense? Psychologically, when you look at people who look like you, connect with them more. All of these things, I have to get into a whole class of psychology, history, politics, and then be the person to give that information. A Punjabi doesn't need to do this. Will anyone ever ask why do Punjabis like Bhangra? No, because they already know. So when we're talking about education, when we're talking about all this, we have to realize that we have to focus on this. Okay, we all blame the education system. We say, oh, you don't know this, you don't know that. South India is very important. In India, let's say, we are very relevant. All the money is from here. We all know we are pushing the money into the central government, which is being spent on other parts of the country. We're all aware. Yeah. How many old kingdoms from South India conquered other countries in the world? Do you know? Do you know that the largest empire that ever existed that had its claim in India was from South India? And it wasn't the Mauryas, it wasn't the Guptas. Who was it? Right, now you all know. Do you think a North Indian knows this? Why do they not know it? Is it there in your education system? No, you're not taught that. Have you ever read about any Northeastern kingdom when you were studying history? Do you know that there are Northeastern kingdoms that have been in existence from 2000 BC? So when we're talking about education not being available, it's this. From the very basic, it's not there. And what education do mainly people get about India? You eat dogs. You all eat momo 24/7. Your names sound like Chinese. You speak Chinese. You look Chinese. Okay, we do have Mongoloid features, I agree. But do people realize that across the Northeast there are more than 1,000 languages? And not one of them belongs to the Sino-Tibetan group. They're all Tibeto-Burman, or they're Indo-Aryan, or they're completely new groups. Do you know, like linguistically right now, there is a language spoken in Manipur called Tangkhul. And it is the most exciting language right now in the field of linguistics. White people know more about it than the average Indian. So the Tangkhul people have a language that was always considered one. But then they realized that every Tangkhul village actually has a separate language that belongs to this group. So right now, researchers have found out that there are over 400 Tangkhulic languages. And it's probably the only Asian language in India that has got its own language group tag. But who's interested in figuring this out? Some white man sitting in New York, not someone sitting in Bombay, Bangalore. So when we're talking about systemic problems, it's this. When we move into the media also, we're always trying to talk about the Northeast, but what is the news we're giving out? We're only getting news of this many people killed, army attacked here, this many bombs blasted, this many women raped. It's never good news. When's the last time you read something about Northeast that made you feel nice? Never. As a journalist myself, I have not. So what we did very recently, I work for the New Indian Express group. And we spoke to our chairman and we said, people need to know about the Northeast other than all of this, other than all the political strife. People need to know about our cultural relevance to this country, right? So, for almost a year and a half now in Indulge, which is the newspaper I edit for the New Indian Express, we have a dedicated page called the Northeast, which has interviews from Arunachal, Mizoram, Manipur, where we talk to artists, we talk to cultural performers, we talk to designers, we talk to everyone who can increase soft power. Because believe me, the only way future as a media person I know is to make Northeast relevant to the average Indian. Today it is not relevant. They do not know anything about us. If they do not know anything about us, how the hell will they be bothered what is happening to us? They will not. They will never understand why there is so much militancy in the Northeast, why there is so much army control in the Northeast. These are just vague ideas for them. They will know more about the civil war in America than they will know about civil wars happening in the Northeast. So, as Northeastern people for a long time, we were hoping for the center to do all of these things. It is never going to happen. The center, whoever is in power, will be driven by majority politics. Let's make peace with it. We are never going to be a majority. So now, as more people in the Northeast are being educated, are coming out to cities like Bangalore, Bombay, Delhi, wherever else, going abroad, it is individually every Northeastern person's duty to make your culture relevant. Instead of you, and I'm going to sound really preachy here, but I don't know how else to say this. Instead of you posting pictures of Mariah Carey performing or some K-pop band, every single day on your Instagram, put a post about your own culture. Make your Instagram a feed about your own culture. Make people realize, see, because this country is run by people who like to be spoon-fed. Nobody is going to, if you're someone who likes knowledge, yes, you will go and Google stuff. But the average Indian wants it to be spoon-fed to them. And instead of giving just this negative image about the Northeast all the time, that oh, they eat weird things, they're backward, they're this, they're that, let's give them the positive sides of where we come from. And believe me, over time things will change. The media is always there to back you. Are we doing enough? Of course we're not doing enough. We could be doing so much more. But it takes so much effort to even get a single page of Northeast. Like 1 year we had to fight and eventually it happened. Yeah? But these battles can be won and they should be won. And I think as Northeastern people who are becoming more vocal in this country, we really have to fight towards that. You know, recently, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a Manipuri, recently in the Lok Sabha, when I heard my language being spoken for the first time, one of our MPs actually spoke in Meitei in front of the whole audience. I felt represented. And my hope is that the whole Northeast gets that. That our languages are taken seriously, our cultures are taken seriously, our food is taken seriously. The media will do it, they will help you along the way. But that impetus should come from the community. So, yeah, I think that should answer your question.
Thank you so much, Romal. You remind me of, like, you know, surviving in cities like Bangalore, Delhi, or other metropolitan cities. It requires you to have such a thick skin. So if you do not have thick skin, you know, like someone would call me, oh, you know, like you love momo, you eat dogs. I used to say, because in the Mizo language, I say, when someone, during COVID, they used to call me Corona in my locality, and I used to say hoi. Hoi means yes, which is also in Meeting. So I just casually responded that way. It is such that we started developing a thick skin to survive. So with that, sometimes like it has been a challenge because it seems ignorant, and then we must have heard, like when this Instagrammer comes, paradise unexplored in Northeast. We have explored it. It's just that you don't say it. Don't come and say we are unexplored. So I think that is the challenge, and that kind of barriers need to be broken. So I think Ananya has a question. Yeah.
I'm so happy you brought that up. I think Northeastern, we have to take example from South India. For example, today, when we talk about the Kannada problem in people imposing Kannada, a lot of people have a problem against it. But let's remember, Tamil Nadu imposed Tamil in the 1990s, and today nobody messes with them, right? Because they were a majority, they stood up for themselves. For the longest time, if you were a Tamilian, you were made fun of as being dark, or being primitive. Look at the old Bollywood representations. What was the Tamilian? It was always hilarious. Ravan shows Tamilians eating Maggie with curd. Like, stupid things like that. But only when the culture steps back and literally shows the middle finger to the person who is, kind of suppressing you, things will not change. And the same thing has to happen with Northeast. So if Tamilians in the early 90s were also all like, oh my god, I'm just going to hide in a corner whenever people are racially discriminating me and calling me dark, calling me ugly, nothing would have changed. But they decided, because they had political motivation, to show the middle finger to the North and say, we are majority here, you will do as I say. Karnataka is doing it right now. I know it's very tough for a lot of people who don't know Kannada, but in the larger political game, what is happening now is correct. Because otherwise, nobody is going to respect Kannada. We are a city overrun with people who don't speak the language. And that language will come into place. And believe me, over time, we teach ourselves to just make do. A good example is Hyderabad. Today in Hyderabad, there are two opposing communities. One community that says Telugu should be the medium of instruction. One community that says, hey, no man, Hyderabad is so chill, we speak in Hindi to everyone. For how long? Till when Telugu disappears. So it's either you're on this side or on that side. You either play the good guy and become irrelevant, or you be the bad guy and stay relevant. And the Northeast today has to stay relevant. So we either take example from this, or we continue to be absolutely ignored in this country.
Thank you so much. My question had come to Meemansa because Romal also covered a lot about legal institutions. The fact that we do have laws in place. I mean, ever since these recent incidents of racism that came up, there's been a renewed cry and demand for a specific racism-related law. And till now, when we also, WSN, we've been doing a lot of legal rights training, our resource persons too, for this initiative, we focus a lot on the SC/ST Atrocities Act, laws that are related more to women facing sexual harassment and all, as these are the tools you can use when you face this sort of violence. This is the language that you can use to force a police officer to register your case, so that they know that what you're facing is not just something to be brushed under the carpet. But as Meemansa is the senior program manager with Outlawed India, and Outlawed India does a lot of work on ensuring civic engagement, making legal institutions more accessible. So I really want to know from you, Meemansa, first is that how useful have the existing laws been in sort of fighting these cases of harassment that the communities continue to face? Your experience with legal system and the work, we really want to know more about the work that Outlawed India has also been doing in making sure that legal institutes and mechanisms, they remain accessible to people who are coming from different parts of the country into Bangalore, who face these structural barriers in the system.
Thank you, Ananya, for that question. It's extremely important because whenever we talk about a social issue, it is somewhere related to a legal provision or something. And over here, even though we have some mechanisms, they are clearly not enough. Of late, it has also gained more momentum recently, the need for a specific anti-racism law in India, particularly after the tragic killing of Angel Chakmas. But we know that, like Mr. Chakma was also saying, this is not the first time. This has been going on since so long, and we have lost so many lives to pointless racist attacks since years, literally. But before we talk about a new law, like you were saying, the existing law, so we do rely on SC/ST prevention of atrocities a lot in our trainings when it comes to training people about anti-discrimination and stuff. So we rely a lot on SC/ST Prevention of Atrocities Act, but it is not enough, so to say. Now, what happens is that many a times it is not applied in courts. It is brushed away. Racial discrimination is not seen as a form of atrocity as such under the act and things like that. So the act was anyways brought into place for caste-based atrocities, which are another problem altogether in India. And for that, it is extremely instrumental. It is a very important piece of legislation, no denying that. But at the same time, when it comes to cases of racial discrimination, cases of racist attacks against members of the northeastern community, this act is not properly applied. Some courts have applied it to northeastern communities, keeping in mind the tribal identity of the northeastern individuals. But again, it's not uniform in nature. It's here and there are one-off cases, one-off incidents or whatever. At the same time, we have other generic legal provisions like in the Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita, which was earlier IPC. We have provisions for assault, harassment, insulting modesty, hurt, all of that. But then these provisions are dealing with symptoms, not the root cause, right? And when you treat racist attacks as generic crimes, you are completely overlooking the structural nature of racist racial discrimination. And like both Mr. Chakma and Romal said that it is a structural problem, it is not just a discrimination problem, it's at the institutional level, at the systemic level, this is a problem that exists. So now, because of this, what happens now when a member from the northeastern community is denied housing, when somebody is called cheap, when somebody faces workplace harassment, discrimination, these laws provide little to no recourse, right? And the gap in the legal system, it's not just theoretical, it has consequences. There is a lot of under-reporting of cases, for example. Because victims don't see a point. And anyways, process is punishment in India, right? So, anyways, reporting is a huge issue. Now with all of these things in picture, you don't report. And what happens? That the perpetrators face zero accountability. And this systemic nature of, the structural nature of racial discrimination that we're talking about, it goes unchallenged. Right? Now there is a lot of advocacy going on for this specified law on anti-racism in India, but it is a long way. And especially when it comes to legal progress, it is ridiculously slow. Not to forget, like, again, Romal was talking about representation. So the legal, to bring about any legal reform, there needs to be a political will, correct? And I'm sorry to be morbid, but racial discrimination faced by members of the northeastern community is nowhere on the priority list of the national policy discussion. Nowhere. So this is where community-based awareness or grassroots mobilization comes into picture, where we are trying to bring about youth voices in policy and action, right? Now, this brings me to the work that Outlawed does. We work with communities all over Bangalore. Our flagship program is something called the Nyaya Mitra initiative, where we train paralegals from different communities around Bangalore. So we already work with a lot of migrant communities, Telugu, Tamil, Hindi-speaking communities, and so on. And what happens is, like at Outlawed, our approach is that we are rooted in this very simple principle that any kind of legal protection or advocacy that happens at the community level, the community should be the principal agent of that. It cannot be somebody externally coming and doing these things. It has to be bottom up from the community itself. And that is where the Nyaya Mitra program comes into place also. We identify members from communities and we train them to be legal resource persons, not lawyers, legal resource persons. So they are your Nyaya Mitras. And they work on community-based legal issues for their respective communities. So for example, there is one community in Batrahalli, there is one community near MG Road called Pillana Garden, there is one in Nagasandra, there is one in Banashankari. So there are multiple communities like that and they are all working on their respective community-based issues, and they also provide individual legal assistance to people from their respective communities, right? So the basic model is that they provide individual legal support, they do community-based action, and they also do legal awareness clinics for so they are trying to make law as an accessible thing to the members of the community. They are creating an accessible space where members of the community can come and know about their legal rights, what benefits are available to them, and so on. Why this works is because the Nyayamitra is from the community. That is the first and foremost reason why this is working. So a Telugu speaking migrant worker, for example, will go to a Telugu speaking Nyayamitra to get their issues resolved or whatever, right? And there is no cultural gap, there is no linguistic barrier then. So all of these things are taken care of. Now, I was thinking about this a lot, and I was also thinking about how we can involve and engage northeastern communities in Bangalore, maybe towards doing something socially like this. And like really, the work that we have been doing can be translated and scaled into this as well. We also work with student communities a lot, so we work with student communities all over India, where law students, but it can be any student really, students take up this campus ambassador program and they carry out legal awareness or action-based tasks in their respective communities. So it's a remote program, right? And the action in the sense they identify community-based legal issues, they can file RTIs, they can write legal notices to government representatives, things that a law student can do or things that a general public can do. You don't have to be a lawyer to do these things essentially, right? So that's what I was thinking, that maybe something like a program like this can be envisaged and we can think about it. However, that is also, a long way to go. But just one thing I would like to add, I worked in Arunachal for 3 years. So one thing that I saw over there was the youth mobilization is something else. Every village has a students' union. Every village. And I went to a lot of villages, so I can see that it is quite prominent. It's not a 1 or 2 village thing. And they have this kind of organizing energy. They work a lot on tribal identities, land rights, cultural preservation, community welfare, and so many things. So when youngsters from the northeast come to cities like Bangalore, Bombay, Delhi, Kolkata, whatever, they bring this organizing energy with them. But there's no right context or right channel for them to put this energy into. So that is the gap that we need to bridge, I guess.
I'm very happy she covered the legal perfectly, but I think something that we have to, this is not a new conversation. This right against racial attacks and all of that has been a long time conversation. However, most people do not seem to understand that laws cannot be biased towards one community alone. So if we do bring in a law that protects people against racist attack, it works for everyone. How comfortable is the Northeast about that? Because, for example, it's not like Northeasterns are not racist to people from outside when they are in Northeast, right? Are we mature enough to be at a fact where we are willing to be the perpetrator and not the victim? Because a law like this will also attend to that. It's not only going to save Northeastern people. When you are the perpetrator, you will also come under that. And so, are we ready to deal with ourselves at that point? That you have to understand the law cannot just have a bias against one community. Also, why are so many people against a law like this? Imagine the number of cases that will be put on from between South India and North India for racist allegations. Northeastern cases will get cornered. It will be like 1% of whatever is there. The most number of cases will be South against North, right? So it's a big can of worms, which is why people don't want to open it. So when we're talking about this, please be aware of the reality of the situation in India. If we open that can of worms of racism, this country will be turned upside down. And a lot of people don't want that. So.
Thank you so much. With this conversation about racism law or policy infrastructure towards it, there was a point of time in Delhi when, at the peak of the whole protest movement on racism and anti-racism, obviously that was after the Richard Loitam case, the Lindo Tania case, there was this special booklet given out by the Delhi police on how Northeast need to behave. Do not wear skirts that is revealing, do not eat smelly foods in your rents like bamboo shoots, akuni, do not go out at nights for sleepovers, people who stay in rent should not bring in guys. All this kind of guidebooks and guidelines was there. that was before the much institutionalization of the Best Barua Committee. And obviously, after that, we have the Best Barua Committee instituted, and after that, we have the recommendations, which translates somehow, somewhere, a little bit into the policy action. And then, obviously, that led to what we now know today in Delhi as the Special Protection Unit for the Northeast region, the police unit, more particularly. Because that was such a remark which even the Delhi police gave. And then we know this policy infrastructure, in the government level, there has been something. So that's why my question will be directed to our bureaucrat here, Rajesh sir. He has been the Joint Commissioner here for a year now. And there might be, obviously, Bangalore was also rocked by the Northeast exodus, where we see thousands and thousands of migrants coming back to, to the Northeast. And there was such a chaos for almost a month in Bangalore back then. That was 10 years ago. Sir, from your point, like as a commissioner here staying, as a resident commissioner here, have you seen like what kind of protection are available for people from the Northeast region, not just particularly since though you work into the government of Manipur right now? What are the protection or legal mechanism, maybe a grievance cell, maybe a help desk that are available for them? Because Northeast, when they stay here, we know that in Bangalore you pay such a high deposit, more than $1 lakh for a student even themselves, and to get that deposit becomes such a big tassel. So these are the everyday realities when it comes to housing, when it comes to accessing certain educational institutes even, or even some other welfare schemes for the government. So what has been like the change? Has there been any change in that, or has there been some legal protection or mechanism for Northeast people? And what is your view in terms of for Northeast, how can we make the city more safe? Because even Bangalore is not excluded from this. It has such a big history of the Northeast exodus.
Yeah, good afternoon all. Thank you for the opportunity. And see, most of the points have been made by the respective panelists, Romal sir, Meemansa ma'am, Amit. I would like to give you a disclaimer. Today I am here, my personal capacity, and it doesn't mean that I will not be very forthcoming in expressing my points. I will definitely, because end of the day, as every one of us, we are all citizens of India. Okay. With respect to brothers' question regarding the legal protection mechanisms, as Romal sir was studying, I always tell my people from eastern part of India. Because see, those who are well educated, brother, sir, brother Amit, see, we tend to go to the blue collar jobs, not the white collar jobs. Okay, but most of our people, especially after the exodus, since 2023, so many people have moved out, and either they are 7th, 8th, or even they are not even studying, so they don't have any awareness about the constitutional rights. Okay, it always starts with self-education. To be honest, how many of us study honestly, with respect to for the sake of gaining knowledge out of curiosity. Especially, to be honest, I tell you, I started studying about most of the things. I became curious only after I thought I should go and write with this. Otherwise, none of us would have tried. To be honest, do you accept it? See, we are not curious enough. Okay, and where it should start. So I always tell my people, the moment you start moving out of your village, please be in touch with your respective student organizations or the welfare organizations, the concerned metropolitan cities. Okay, that's where the constitutional provisions and Article 15, it's very well intense. Everyone moving on to acts and all. They particularly mentioned about the SC, the Prevention of Atrocities Act and all, and the Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita, the Article 190, Section 196 and 197, plus with respect to our women, it's about Section 509. But more than that, we should start from a self-education point of view. So the next thing is, there was a discussion in Delhi. It's activist policy need not be only in the northeastern part of India. It must actually also happen in the metropolitan cities. That is where most of our youths, to be honest, because we are living behind our parents back there. We are living behind our uncles there. Now we are coming here. We are living grandparents there. So almost all, our entire 50%, like 25-30% of the youth population, they are living metropolis cities. Okay. So and the government of India definitely is working. See, to start with, we started from Delhi. And some of the state governments, like government of Manipur, government of Assam, they have started constructing respective bhavans in other metropolitan cities. Okay, that's the purpose of Joint Western Commission is to take care of the welfare of people. And apart from the from the constitutional and legal acts, various acts that are available, most of the times our people we are very reluctant to come forward and report the cases. And unfortunately, when it comes to Bureau of Police Research and Development, which is the organization, and also the National Crime Records Bureau, NCR, which is the main organization which compiles data with respect to attacks, especially per se there is no category with respect to racial attacks. Okay, and then when Madam asked this question, has there any change? Without data, how can we compare? I don't know for right or wrong, and sir pertinently mentioned that reason why most of us, and even it's not about questioning the wisdom of Parliament or wisdom of the Supreme Court or wisdom of Executive. So it's about opening can of worms. See, the purpose of bringing any anti-racism law is to remove it, yes or no? But the question is, the moment we bring in this element of act, this act with respect to racism, we are only, that's why it's a double-edged sword, two-edged sword. So it will, and in parallel, it will also entrench, the deep, deepest, yeah, exactly. See, if you look at the YouTubes and various social media, you look at the narrative that gets started. I know, interestingly, day before yesterday, I was looking at one comment. And one was, defending. So far, I used to defend our brothers and sisters from Northeast India. But, since, last, I think 2 days back, I came across an incident where somebody in Manipur called Bihar, some particular soldier Bihari. Then now I'm stopping defending them. See, this is not how things work. Okay, so the question is, it's also about, the awareness. Sir was telling, why are we not bringing out the best part about Northeast India? I'll tell you an example. See, in Bengaluru, if you go to a site, BDSR, so even I'm the legitimate, claimant, there will be 10, 15, separate documents, which are proper, done through proper procedure, and there will be 15 claimants for the same law. I was working in a district, in my state there, back there. So there was a dispute between two villages about a land. This land belongs to who? So interestingly, there's a meeting. Villagers from both the villages they came, and there was one more villager who came from the third village. So they got two members from the respective villages, who were the complainants, and they created artificial ponds. Okay, and both of them were made to submerge in the water. And the person who came last, that village won. See, this may seem primitive. That's the end of the dispute. No more questions. Bloody here, look at the other metropolitan cities. Do we come across such form of conflict solutions? They will go to High Court, they will go to Supreme Court, they will go to appeal, single bench, two judges, bench. See, the thing is that there are so many beautiful stories, so many beautiful facts with respect to our communities, in Northeast India. So somebody came to me and said, "Why don't you write, in Kannada?" I said, "Okay, why not? I will write." But it is not me who lost interest. It is the other way. The editor, I don't know, after a period of time, he said, he stopped responding. So don't stories like the facts like this deserve to be published, and how people should know about them. So thing is that it's a long-term game. It's a long game. Okay, and every one of us the moment we step out of a village. To be honest, in my way village, I belong to the district of Mandya. Okay, sometimes we quarrel the neighbor village. and they stop the water. Earlier there used to be, they used to stop the water. Okay, but again, there is a discrimination with respect to our people from northern part of Karnataka and southern part of Karnataka, coastal. So then it moves on to north, south, east, west. See, the question is, when it comes to creating awareness, it all must start with our individual home. It is not like there is a brown cow, black cow, white cow, and there is black crow. So I am respecting the black crow and the black cow because they are black. This is not education. I am respecting everybody. It's because of a human thing. So it's about mutual respect. So anyhow, I don't want to take much time. So it all starts from realizing our rights, constitutional, legal. Then the foundation, we should build on this foundation and then move on. And end of the day, as I was telling, Madam was telling, and Amit was also telling, we all realize, northeast part of India, the moment there is Olympic medal. After that, Manipuri dance is there, Naga dance is there,